My brother-in-law pointed at the door of my own lake house and told me to leave before the family party started. Loud enough for the neighbors to hear. The key I carried would not turn the lock core had been replaced, and the crowd behind him blocked the hallway with folding chairs and paper lanterns. If I argued or forced my way in, I would look like the troublemaker in front of my parents. If I called the police too soon, I could confuse a civil dispute with a criminal one. He wanted the house for a free weekend, and the thrill of claiming what was not his. But the glossy invitation in his hand showed a maintenance code with one wrong character. The same code I had placed on a service ticket last month. And that tiny mistake would open every door he thought he had closed. I kept my voice level. "This is my house," I said. "Registered owner. You know that." He smiled with his teeth. Not his eyes. "We're already set up. Mom said it was fine. You can come back Monday." Behind him, my sister avoided my face. She fussed with a tablecloth and told a teenager where to put the plastic cups. Balloons bobbed in the bay window. My father shuffled in behind the crowd, trying to keep the peace by staying quiet. I felt the air in my chest go tight. Then steady. I stepped back so I could see the whole porch. The door. The lock. The welcome mat. The half-dead fern I had not watered last week. I needed the picture fixed in my mind like a ledger line. "Your key must be old," my brother-in-law said, as if he were doing me a favor. "We had to change the lock. For safety." "For safety," I repeated slowly. I looked at the cylinder face and saw a faint crescent of scratched metal around the keyway. It was fresh. I walked down the steps to the gravel path and took out my phone. My hands did not shake. I opened the folder I had named HOA House Admin and scrolled to 2 documents: Security and Lock Service Agreement and Community Guest Policy. I had signed both when I first moved here 2 years ago. After the doctor told me to rest my back, and I decided the lake was the only place where rest meant anything. The service contract listed the lock model, serial numbers, and the last change order my order 30 days ago. The guest policy was simple. Every overnight guest must be registered by the owner. No exceptions for family. Across the street, a neighbor waved and lifted his small dog from the grass. His doorbell camera blinked a soft blue pulse. I nodded back. He had given me permission to download clips from his camera if anything ever felt wrong. "Just in case," he had said, when I brought him an apple pie the week I moved in. "Things happen." I called the community office. "It's me." I told the receptionist. "Please check today's guest list for lot 14. She typed, "No guests registered for 14. Thank you. Please notate that I requested verification at 5:12 p.m. I ended the call and opened my text messages with Mr. Sauz. Alvarez, the locksmith who had replaced my locks last month. He always wore a navy cap and kept his tools in neat rows like a careful cook. He had warned me then, tapping the old core with a small pick. "Anyone who held the previous keys can copy a blank if they get a willing counter. If you worry about that, we can add a restricted keyway and a simple audit." I had said yes. He had left a spare cylinder in a sealed bag with my name and date. And he had given me a 1-page diagram of the pins, signed in blue ink. I took a picture of that page now and sent it to him. "Can you come?" They changed the core. "I need confirmation for HOA." He replied with only 2 words. "On my way." My mother came to the porch, wringing a dish towel. "Don't make a scene," she whispered. "Everyone is tired. It's one evening." "Mom," I said softly. "He changed my lock." She glanced over her shoulder. "Your sister just wants the family together." In my house, she shrugged and pressed the towel to her lip. "It's already decorated." I looked at her hands. The towel had a small berry stain on one corner. She kept dabbing a spot that was not bleeding. I reached out and lowered her hand. "Go inside," I said. "I'll handle it." I walked along the deck railing and took photos the door, the lock face, the scratch marks, the invitation in my brother-in-law's hand. I asked him, "May I see that he flapped it in the air?" "It's just a party invite. I see a code on the footer." I said. Where did you get it? It came with the catering order. He answered too fast. The code printed there, LB14MAINT07, was wrong by one character. My actual service ticket was LB14MAINT01. I had written it down in my planner when I booked Mr. Alvarez. My brother-in-law had seen my planner once at Sunday dinner and joked that it looked like a court docket. He did not know I numbered things for a reason. 2 cars pulled into guest spots near the mail kiosk. The first was HOA operations. The second was security patrol. The officer was not a police officer. He carried no weapon. But he wore the calm posture of someone who knew when to stand and when to listen. I greeted them at the walkway. The officer nodded at the clipboard in my hand. You prepared. Only what the rules ask. I said. We approached the porch together. My brother-in-law drew himself up. We're having a private event. Please leave. The HOA manager spoke before I did. Sir, this is a common interest community. Use of the property is subject to recorded covenants. We don't have guest registration for Lot 14. Only the owner can host this size of gathering. He laughed. The owner is family. The manager glanced at me. I held up my driver's license and my owner badge. Owner present. She said. No guest registration. We need to resolve this. My sister finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired. We printed the invites already. She said, as if paper made a thing lawful. A child ran past her, knocking 2 cups to the floor. She bent to pick them up with quick, quiet hands, the way she always cleaned a mess that was not hers. Mr. Alvarez's van rolled to the curb. He stepped out with his cap and 2 small tool cases. Evening. Ma'am, he said to me. Evening. Folks. He squinted at the lock from 3 steps away, then smiled a little. That's fresh work. He pointed to the faint ring. See the scrape? Somebody didn't seat the plug right. Then tried twice to correct it. My brother-in-law snorted. We had a professional. Alvarez shrugged. Some are, some aren't. If you have the paper from last month, I can compare cores and note the difference. I handed him the sign diagram. He looked from the page to the door and back again. This isn't my core, he said. Gentle but firm. Different pinning. Also, this faceplate isn't how I leave screws mine align vertically. He took 2 photos and typed the time on each image. If permitted, I can remove and inspect, but only the owner can authorize. I authorize, I said. The HOA manager nodded. Proceed. We'll observe. Alvarez worked quietly. He laid a white cloth on the porch and set each screw in a neat line. When he slid the plug free, a sprinkle of bright metal dust fell onto the cloth. He tapped once, and a thin shaving of brass curled like a shaving from a pencil. He photographed the dust with a pen for scale. He held the plug to the light. New core, he said. Not the one I installed. And this groove here tells me a copy key blank was used to test fit. Whoever did it didn't have the restricted keyway we issued. My brother-in-law shifted his weight. We had to change it because the old lock was loose. Alvarez tilted his head. Loose is not a reason to replace a restricted cylinder without the owner. It's a reason to call the service number on the sticker. He pointed at the faded oval near the hinge. The number matched the one in my contacts. The HOA manager wrote quietly. The security officer wrote too. The porch smell changed, less party punch. More metal and paper, and the faint oil from Alvarez's case. A breeze lifted the edges of the invitation in my brother-in-law's hand. He clamped it down with his thumb. I said, Where is my memory box? He tried to laugh. What box? The cedar box from the study. I said, It holds our father's letters. It isn't on the shelf. My sister's face slipped, then she forced it back into place. We moved it to a safe space. She said, Eyes on the floor. Whose safe space? I asked. Across the street, the neighbor with the small dog waved again and called out, I have video from this afternoon if anyone needs it. He lifted his phone and showed a still frame my brother-in-law walking down my steps at 3 o'clock. The cedar box under his arm. The lid loose. My brother-in-law's mouth opened. Then shut. We were protecting it, he said. Voice low now. People steal things at parties. The HOA manager looked from the phone to the lock to my face. Ms. Lane, she said to me. Under Section 5. You may request immediate suspension of guest access until registration is corrected and property is restored. Would you like to file that now? Yes, I said. Please. She placed a simple form on her clipboard. I signed where she tapped. The paper felt warm from her hand. The security officer took the copy and spoke evenly to my brother-in-law. Sir, we're going to ask your guests to wait on the lawn while we sort this. No one else enters the dwelling until the owner approves. You may bring the box out now. He tried to wave the officer away. This is ridiculous. My sister tugged his sleeve. Bring it, she whispered, barely moving her lips. Please. He set the invitation on the table and walked inside with short, irritated steps. The crowd inside parted and murmured. A toddler began to cry and then stopped when someone picked her up. The kitchen light flicked on. I watched his shoulders tighten as he lifted the cedar box and carried it back to the porch. He placed it on the cloth next to Alvarez's careful line of screws. The lid creaked. The letters were wrapped in a white ribbon. The ribbon had been retied in a hurry. The knot sat crooked. I touched the box with my fingertips. The cedar smelled like old closets and winter sweaters. I did not open it yet. I held the feeling of the wood under my hand, the way I would hold the edge of a table during a storm steady. Firm. Not dramatic. Thank you, I said. The officer noted the return. The HOA manager finished her form and handed me a yellow copy. We'll also issue a temporary suspension for your brother-in-law's amenity access pending review, she said. That means pool, dock, pavilion, clubroom. It's standard when there's a dispute with a lock change and unregistered entry. From the driveway, a familiar voice called. You rang the old bell, and I came. I turned. Mr. Harlan, the retired gate guard, stood with a quick smile and a paper notebook. He wore the jacket he used to wear on cool nights. The one with the frayed cuffs and the community patch still neat on the chest. Saw your message, he said to me. I keep the old logbooks in my garage until the office wants them. Don't ask me why. He lifted the notebook. Yesterday, at 2:40 p.m. This gentleman here told my replacement he was the owner of Lot 14 and needed a delivery waved through fast. My man wrote it down and asked for ID. But the car behind was honking, and he let it go. I scolded him later. He's new. My brother-in-law flushed. Everyone knows the family owns it, he muttered. I looked at my sister. We talked a month ago. I said quietly, I told you family could come any weekend if we signed them in. That was the only rule I asked you to respect. She bit the inside of her cheek. I was tired, she said. He said it would be easy. Her eyes filled. But she kept her chin level. I didn't think you'd be here. I pay the taxes, I said gently. I live here. Behind us. The lake tapped its small waves against the dock. Tia simple sound. Not trying to be anything but water and wood. Someone turned off the party speaker inside. The house exhaled. The HOA manager closed her clipboard. This is the plan, she said. Guests move to the lawn area. Owner inspects the interior with security present. Any property moved without consent is listed and returned. Lock core is restored to the registered configuration. After that, we can talk about whether a smaller family gathering is possible tonight under the rules. If not, the pavilion is open with a reservation form. My brother-in-law started to protest, then saw the crowd watching him. I saw Mr. Ray, Alvarez holding the foreign core with 2 fingers. I saw Mr. Ray, Harlan's old notebook open to yesterday's page. Saw the neighbor's phone with the small blue frame of my cedar box. His shoulders lowered. He looked not angry now, only smaller than he had made himself sound. I nodded. We will follow the plan. I said, everyone will be treated kindly, but my house will be treated as mine. I lifted the cedar box and held it close to my chest. The ribbon brushed my wrist. I could feel the grain through the thin cotton of my sleeve. For the first time since the porch door refused my key, my breathing felt ordinary again. As the security officer guided the guests to the lawn, my mother came toward me with the dish towel. Can I help? She asked in a small voice. Yes, I said. Please keep the children on the grass and away from the steps. We'll be done soon. She nodded and did as I asked. It was such a simple thing. A mother moving children from a porch to a patch of green. But the whole evening turned on that small act of order. I turned to the door. Mr. Alvarez offered the original core in its sealed bag. Ready when you are, he said. Let's put it back. I answered. He smiled and set to work. The core slid in with a soft click. The screws aligned in a neat vertical line, and the key in my hand turned cleanly home, opening to its owner. Not by force, not by noise, but by the exact fit of the right piece in the right place. When the porch emptied, the silence didn't bring relief. It magnified every sound, the rustle of a balloon against the railing, the faint hum of the fridge through the open window, the scrape of Mr. Belix, Alvarez's screwdriver as he reassembled the lock. Inside, my sister stood by the counter, twisting her ring. My mother arranged leftover pastries into neat rows, avoiding everyone's eyes. My brother-in-law hovered near the hallway, still in control of nothing but the volume of his voice. You're really turning this into a circus, he said. Over a lock and a misunderstanding I didn't answer. I walked to the table where the invitation still lay and set down the HOA form beside it. The two papers looked like before and after photos of the same lie. Mr. Harlan flipped through his old notebook. Funny thing, he said, tapping a page. You know, I logged your car too. Ma'am, 3 minutes after his. You were the only owner who stopped to show your card that day. He smiled faintly. That's what saved you. Paper trails are quiet miracles. The HOA manager glanced at me. Would you like to document a property inspection? Yes, I said. And please include all fixtures and personal effects visible from entryway to master hall. We entered. The air inside smelled of lemon polish and cheap wine. Decorations dangled from the ceiling fan. On the mantel, my father's framed photo leaned face down. I picked it up and dusted the glass. My sister whispered, We didn't mean to move things. Intentions don't restore ownership. I said softly, Action do. The officer noted every detail. Snapping photos. He paused at the living room bar, 3 empty wine bottles. Corks tossed in a bowl. Unopened, he asked. My brother-in-law scoffed. Of course not. We were celebrating what he hesitated. Eyes flicking toward my sister. Family. I opened the cedar box on the counter. Inside, the letters lay in order by date until halfway through, where a single page from the HOA ledger was folded between them. My handwriting marked the margin access logs for personal record. I hadn't put that there. I looked up. Who added this? No one answered. Mr. Alvarez stepped closer. That's not just a copy, he murmured. That's an original ledger sheet. HOA keeps those in the archive room. The manager frowned. We don't issue paper copies without a written request. So how did it get here? I asked. My sister's hand trembled. He said it was okay. She whispered. He told me he had permission. My brother-in-law barked a laugh. It's just a piece of paper, I was checking a date. The manager's face hardened. Sir, unauthorized access to our archives is a violation. Who gave you entry? His silence stretched too long. That was when the neighbor with the dog, still standing by the fence, called out again. I've got more footage if you want it. Shows him carrying something from the HOA office at lunchtime. The officer looked at me. Would you like to file this as evidence? Yes, I said. Send the copy to Compliance and Legal Counsel. The officer nodded and began documenting. My mother sat down, hands clasped. Enough, she whispered. We're all family. Family doesn't forge keys. Mom, I said gently. Family knocks before entering. The room stilled. Even the ceiling fan seemed to hesitate before resuming its slow spin. My sister began to cry quietly. He said you'd forgive me if we cleaned up after. She said. He said you always do. I would have forgiven you. I said. But he tried to rewrite the locks and the truth. Mr. Alvarez cleared his throat. Ma'am, I'll submit my technician's affidavit tonight. With the photos, timestamps, and matching core serial. You'll have full proof. Thank you, I said. The HOA manager gathered her clipboard. We'll be issuing a suspension pending investigation. The board meets Tuesday. You may also request damages for lock replacement and security breach. I'll file the paperwork, I said. As she left, my brother-in-law muttered. You think this will make you the hero? You embarrassed your own family. I turned to him. Calm. No. You embarrassed yourself. I just documented it. Mr. Harlan chuckled softly near the doorway. That's the thing about paper trails, he said. They don't care who smiles bigger. They care who signs last. When everyone had gone except my sister, she stood there twisting her ring again. He said it was for one night. He said you'd never find out. I always find out, I said. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'll fix this. You can't fix it, I replied quietly. But you can stop helping him break things. Outside, the sky shifted to a soft gray blue. Mr. Alvarez loaded his tools, waved, and left. The officer gave me a copy of the report and assured me a full statement would follow. As the cars pulled away, I sat on the porch step and ran my fingers over the edge of the cedar box. It felt heavier now. Not from the letters inside, but from the proof it carried uninvited truths folded between pages meant for love. Somewhere down the lake, a party boat laughed into the night. I didn't envy them. I had my quiet victory. The lock clicked home again. The paper trail was sealed. And the truth small, steady, undeniable was on my side. By Monday morning, the HOA boardroom felt more like a courtroom. The blinds were half drawn. The conference table covered in folders and printouts. My name sat on a placard beside the word owner. Across from me, my brother-in-law's seat read, Guest under review. He smirked when I entered. Bringing lawyers now, I placed a small flash drive on the table. Just evidence. The manager, Ms. Clark, began calmly. We have 3 matters: unauthorized lock replacement, archive breach, and misrepresentation of ownership. She turned to him. You may speak first. He leaned back. This is family business. My wife's sister overreacted. Overreacted, Ms. Clark's brow arched. Mr. Alvarez submitted a sworn statement. Security footage confirms you carried a core cylinder and HOA records. Do you dispute that he hesitated? It was a misunderstanding. Mr. Harlan raised a hand. Misunderstanding doesn't make you the owner of a house you didn't buy. Laughter rippled quietly through the room. My sister sat 2 seats away. Pal? She whispered. Please. Stop. He snapped. You wanted a party. You said she never uses the place. Her eyes filled. I said she needed rest. Not eviction. I kept silent until Ms. Clark invited me to speak. The board asked for documentation. I said, plugging in the flash drive. On the screen appeared 3 images. The neighbor's video clip him carrying the cedar box. The lock core comparison. Alvarez's signature visible. A photo of the ledger page found in the box. With a timestamp from the HOA archive camera. Ms. Clark folded her hands. Mr. Jensen. The camera log shows your entry card used at 1:2:4:1 p.m. Friday. That card is registered to your wife's account. But the footage shows you using it alone. He tried to laugh. So what, I was checking mail. The archive room isn't the mail room. She replied. And you weren't alone. An assistant manager has testified that you claimed you were retrieving owner files. How? The words, owner files, hung in the air. Even he seemed to hear how foolish they sounded. Ms. Clark continued. Given these findings, the board recommends permanent revocation of guest privileges and restitution for damages. A police report will follow for document removal. He slammed his palm on the table. You can't arrest me for paperwork. No, I said quietly. But you can lose everything you thought you controlled. He turned on me. You planned this. All of it. I just wrote things down. I said. You're the one who signed your name to them. Silence. Then Ms. Clark nodded. Meeting adjourned. He stormed out, nearly knocking over a chair. Me sister lingered behind. I'll pack his things, she murmured. You shouldn't have to see him again. I touched her arm. Just take your time. The door will open when you knock. Outside. The air smelled of rain. Mister. Harlan patted my shoulder. That's how you win without shouting, he said. That evening, I returned to the lake house. The porch light glowed steady. The lock untouched since Alvarez restored it. I unlocked the door. Clean click. Same as before, and walked inside. I set the cedar box on the table, and finally untied the crooked ribbon. Inside the letters was one envelope I hadn't noticed my father's handwriting. Property is not walls. It read, It's the proof that you stood for what's right when everyone else wanted you quiet. I folded the note back carefully. He had been gone 10 years. Yet somehow he'd answered today's noise. From the window, I saw my sister's car stop by the curb. She stepped out. No husband beside her. Holding a small bag. I opened the door before she could knock. I didn't know who he really was until today. She said, You know now. I replied. We sat in the quiet kitchen. 2 mugs of tea between us. The house smelled of cedar and rain. I told her she could stay for the night if she wished. She nodded. For the first time, no one tried to speak over the other. The wind outside picked up, shaking the paper lantern still tangled in the porch light. I smiled faintly. They could stay. They were harmless now. Just empty decorations fluttering above a house that finally belonged to itself again. 2 weeks later, the lake house smelled like soap and sunlight again. The last traces of the party were gone. No paper cups. No banners. No tension left in the corners. Only the faint scent of cedar from my father's box remained, mixing with coffee and warm air. My sister stayed for a few nights, helping me repaint the porch railing. She spoke little at first, but every evening, her silence loosened into small sentences about guilt, about pride, about how easy it is to follow someone loud instead of someone right. I didn't need an apology in words. The brushstrokes said enough. When the HOA report arrived, it was clear and quiet, like a final chapter written in numbers and signatures. Unauthorized entry. Proven. Archive breach. Confirmed. Access revoked. Restitution approved. I read it once, then placed it in the folder labeled Resolved. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to hold on to proof. Justice had already done its job. Peace didn't need evidence. That afternoon, Mrs. Harding from the HOA stopped by with a cup of iced tea. The board appreciated how you handled it, she said. No shouting. No spectacle. I had witnesses, I replied. And patience. She smiled. That's rarer than witnesses. When she left, I walked down to the dock. The water shimmered in late light, small ripples brushing the wood. I took out my father's last letter and read it aloud. Fairness doesn't make you soft. It makes you steady. And steady people rebuild what loud ones break. Behind me, my sister appeared with 2 mugs of tea. I never saw him like that before, she said. Greed makes people looter. I answered. She nodded. And you stayed calm. I had help, I said, glancing at the lake, the house, the lock that still turned with one clean click. We sat until the sun slipped behind the trees. When the first stars came out, she whispered, I'm sorry. I touched her hand. I know. The next morning, she packed her car. Before leaving, she placed a small key on the counter. The spare you gave me, she said. I think you should keep it this time. I smiled. When you're ready, I'll make you a new one. After she drove away, the house was quiet again, not empty, but balanced. I brewed coffee, folded the dish towel, and opened the window so the breeze could carry away the last fragments of the weekend that had almost destroyed us. Then, I sat at the table, opened my laptop, and began drafting a note to the HOA newsletter editor. Sometimes protection isn't about new locks. It's about knowing who should hold the key. I signed it simply Margaret Lane, Lot 14. As I hit send, I smiled at the simplicity of my name. No titles. No explanations. Just a person who stood her ground and still found room for forgiveness. The sun poured across the counter, golden and ordinary. I closed the cedar box one last time and placed it on the shelf, where it belonged. This house had seen intrusion, conflict, and proof. But it had also seen repair, patience, and truth. That balance, I realized, was my inheritance. If this story touched you, remember, sometimes quiet strength wins louder than revenge. E to 6. Like, share and subscribe for more real-life inspired stories of justice and forgiveness. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Leave a comment below. Your story might help someone find their own calm.